You are now listening to Creator Corner.
Hi everyone, welcome to Creator Corner. I'm Dalia.
And I'm Mary.
We're so excited to welcome you all back for another episode where Mary and I, just share our musings on creativity. To jump in, we want to start with a quick friend vibe check. So Mary, opening up the space for us, how have you been doing? Is your cup half full, half empty?
No, I think I've been pretty good actually. The weather in the DC, Maryland area has drastically dropped. So naturally it feels more cozy. I'm bundled up right now in a hoodie, and some long pants. So I think overall, I think it's nice to see that we're transitioning into a new season of winter. So I think it has been. I felt good over time because I do like the colder weather more so. I wouldn't say this cold. It's like in the 20s right now, 20-degree weather. But overall, I would say my cup has been pretty full lately for the last couple of weeks, which I know is very different from where I was a couple episodes ago, or a couple weeks ago as well. But what about you, friend? How's your cup been?
First, friend, I want to say that I am so happy to hear that you're feeling a lot better and that your cup is full, overflowing. Hopefully, that makes me so happy to hear. For me, since we last checked in and chatted, it was my birthday. I celebrated a birthday,
Yes.
so feeling 29 for sure.
Scorpio vibes.
For sure, those Scorpio vibes. It's actually really funny that you mentioned that because I actually shared with our producer. They're also a Scorpio, and I said, "Hey, I'm not sure if this is a thing, like a Scorpio thing, a November Scorpio thing. Let me add." But I like sometimes get really emotional in my birthday and I'll just cry. And then they actually shared, that they feel the same way on their birthday. So I don't know, for all November Scorpios out there, can you confirm or deny that birthdays are very emotional and sometimes require a really solid cry session? We'll see. But yeah, I'm feeling, I guess it's interesting because I started utilizing this term a while back, which like a young ancestor, sorry, a young ancestor, and I really like that term because when I think about ancestors, I think about like people in my lineage, like my grandparents, and my grandma, and people that have passed in my lineage, or guardian angels are around me. And I always try to connect with my ancestors, but I started to feel like, as like an elder, like an ancestor, being in the present, being here, and not, I guess not just feeling it. I like in terms of my position in my family, and just the responsibilities of growing up and the wisdom, I guess, coming up to 29. Yeah, so I started identifying with that term, young ancestor, and I think being 29, I feel that even more. Even just like the separation from generations is very interesting as well. Like, people say this, but I don't feel like a regular auntie, and I'm sure you don't either, Mary.
Right.
But yeah, so it's kind of an interesting time. I would say that my cup feels definitely full. And so it is very interesting, as you said, with the cold weather, the daylight savings, but I'm feeling really myself, which is good.
Yeah, for now, I appreciate you sharing that term "young ancestor" because this is the first time I've heard it. But it does, like, it's a pretty cool concept when you think about it. It almost feels kind of like, oh, young ancestor. What does that mean? Because usually people associate ancestors from those that have transitioned to other forms of being, but it doesn't necessarily have to mean that way. especially as you said, coming into the age of 29, almost 3 decades in. I mean, speaking for myself too, um, I think it's interesting to view us as ancestors in the present still. So I like that term a lot.
Yeah, it makes me think a lot about even like, a lot of the generational curses that we're breaking. It's something that people that are going to come after me, I'm so aware. Like I want to be in support of their path. And that doesn't have to, because I always think about it with, which I don't want to get into too deep into the Scorpio vibes here with but it's just I think about the future and the people that are coming after me, and of course it's very in line with like global changes and stuff, like in climate change as well, and all these things that are just happening around the world, that it makes me think that if all the generational curses that we're breaking today, it's for the purpose of those that are coming after me. And it doesn't necessarily have to be in my lineage, it can be just in people that can resonate or even resonate with my experience. So it's more so as like a present term for myself, to remind me that the work that I'm doing is not just for myself, it's for those that are coming after me as well.
Yeah, I mean, talk about, we're the new wave aunties.
Yes, new wave aunties. I like that. Yeah, but that is such a great place to transition into our topic today, Mary. Mary and I were chatting a lot about collaboration, not just in creativity, but also in our personal life. And Mary, in those conversations, there was a couple themes that came to mind. What were some of those themes that you wanted to share with our audience around collaboration in creativity, but also collaboration in community?
Yeah, I think a couple of things come up in terms of, I will start, I think, with the creativity first. So it's interesting, just reflecting back even, and from past guests we've had in terms of creators and how they defined who they collaborate with. It's very intentional. A lot of creators and want to collaborate with people that align with their creative pursuit, and that doesn't necessarily mean that they have to be doing the same thing, but the values have to align. So if when a creator is focusing on sustainability, for example, they would very much collaborate with someone else who's also focusing on perhaps sustainability, but it doesn't have to be the same type of sustainability, but the concept has to align somehow. So I think that's interesting. Now when you think about it, I think personally for me, like people I choose to collaborate with, or more so bring into my circle, my inner circle, there has to be, similar to how a creative wants someone whose values align with their product, with their whatever they're creating, whatever they're producing. There has to be a value alignment there. So I think that resonates with me personally, because I think over time I've learned to, as I grow older, more mature or whatnot, I've become, I think, more selective in terms of who I bring into my circle, who I collaborate with. There has to be a level of alignment in values. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to think like me, you have to believe everything I believe in. But I think the fundamental, basic values of being, like for me, like having, a growth mindset, or having, the willingness to learn about different ideas and different perspectives, are some of the values that I look for when I want to collaborate with someone, or I want to bring someone in my inner circle. So I think those are like kind of the parallels in terms of the creativity and creators we've talked with, and how they define collaboration, and how I made that connection with my own personal way of collaborating with others. But what about you, friend? Like, how have you thought about the concept of collaboration in terms of creativity, and how do you find any connections with how you collaborate in your personal life?
Yeah, friend. Well, first of all, I want to say I appreciate you for sharing that. A lot of what you mentioned actually does resonate with me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, in life, as we grow and go from stages of being like a teenager to a young adult to now like a full grown adult that's supposed to know everything. I'm just kidding because I don't know shit. um, like we do evolve, we change, we transform, and sometimes that means changing ideas or
Mm-hmm.
you know um, tapping into new collaborations, and so it evolves, and so I think that's what really resonated with me, just the evolution of collaboration as it
Yes,
relates
yes.
to the evolution in growth from from a young child to now being, I just mentioned my birthday, now being 29. So that's what really resonates. And one analogy, friend, that you
Mm,
and I were actually like chatting about a little bit, is like when we're in the playground and
yeah.
we're a child, we're on the slide, we're playing tag, we're running around, you're just enjoying yourself. You're finding the
Mm-hmm.
folks that want to play, and that's how you're going to connect. Who wants to play this game, and
Right, right.
the intention there is to laugh, have fun, enjoy yourself. And those are, as a child, that's the best type of collaboration. You're
Mm-hmm.
imagining together, you're enjoying together, and that definitely evolves as you're an adult. As you mentioned, you become a little bit more intentional about who's in the playground with you, which I
Mm-hmm.
really really enjoyed that, friend, because um you know some like as we're and it's interesting because similar values that I think that I would have as a child in terms of collaboration. Does this person want to like laugh, have fun,
Yes,
enjoy,
yes,
like have those
exactly.
childlike wonder. Like I still value that a lot as an adult. I still
Yep.
want to like invite someone into my playground that
Mm-hmm.
is like that values laughter, that doesn't take it too seriously, mention growth mindset, so willing to fail and learn
Yep.
and evolve, and just take things very lightly. So that's when I think about who's in my playground now as an adult, those are the things that are still coming to mind even as a child. But
Mm.
friend, you mentioned a little bit about how being older now, you think about value alignment, and you defined a little bit about what that means for you. But can you like just dive a little bit deeper and share how your playground, I guess, has evolved in your life?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I like that. It's a fun question. I think reflecting back on, again, the concept of what collaboration means. And collaboration doesn't necessarily mean you have to do something super serious. It could just be, again, who you bring, like you said, who you bring into your playground, to your space. But I would say growing up, like in elementary school and especially in a huge urban city in LA, inner city, like I grew up in a city youth in LA. Um, I remember really gravitating. So I love playing sports, like any sport I can play anything with a ball. I was always down for. So I remember being in elementary school, even in middle school, and leading up to high school, actually throughout my whole damn academic career. um, I've always gravitated and wanted to play with or collaborate with people who also like playing sports. But then, again, reflecting back on it, there's also that part of me that really enjoyed school, really liked the academics. And again, I think it's that curious part of me. So that I also collaborated with and hung out with people who were like quote unquote, back in the days when people were mean and kids were being kids, like kids who made fun of people who did really good in school and called them nerds and geeks and whatever. Super mean. I wouldn't. That's terrible. But I also enjoyed being around that community or that, that again, like that for collaboration because I like doing my homework. I like getting my work done. So it's interesting as I think about it, and yeah. So that was like elementary school, middle school, and leading up to high school. But even in college, I had a group where it was just for partying or just having fun with. But then I had a group where I'm like, okay, I need to hit the books and I need to study for this test and whatnot, or memorize, because that's what we were taught to memorize. Um, but I think reflecting back in the journey from, where I started as a young kid in LA to now, almost being 3 decades old. um, I think each community that I collaborated with, or each space I collaborated with, had a purpose. Again, if it was more so for sports, I was playing with sports people. If it was to study, I was studying with people or whatnot, whatever that is. So I think it's interesting even talking about it now, that evolution, because while I have evolved for sure, but there's still commonalities or similarities where I feel like I could adapt to different communities. But the main difference is that I'm more choosy, I'm more selective on what type of communities, or even within those communities, like who the people I choose to collaborate with or hang out with is very selective now. It's very intentional now. While before in the playground, I played with everyone who played sports. I played with everyone who, liked school or did work with school. I think that is the main difference now, is that I wouldn't invite everyone to, go out to a coffee shop with, for example, or I wouldn't invite everyone to, I don't know, join like a specific hobby that's personal to me. So I think it's interesting to look at it in that way, the evolution of how I adapted. But then again, finding those similarities and connections throughout the year. So yeah, I think that's where I'm at right now in terms of who's in my playground, who's in my space, and who's in my inner circle, and who I choose to collaborate with.
Yeah, I appreciate you for sharing that, friend. And I definitely resonate with the aspects of your communities evolving and being a little bit more selective of the communities that we're part of and who we choose to play with, collaborate. And I like to use collaborate and play interchangeably.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna do that here, because to me, I mentioned, like, I still have some of those general things that I cared about when I was a child, which, does this person want to have fun, enjoy themselves? Like, are we, like building sandcastles or something, or doing like telenovelas in the playground or whatever. So those things are still there, but maybe it's the aspect of, of course, the capitalism structures of your job and having the day-to-day that makes it harder. And so those are things that perhaps may, at least for me, I'll speak for myself, may lead to being more selective, because we're more busy, so we have to be more intentional. So it is interesting, and I have enjoyed all our conversations with our creators, because what I love about when I hear how they collaborate, who they collaborate with, is that it takes so many different forms. We've mentioned this so many times, but no creative piece of art happened on its own. It happened with so many different folks that were willing to collaborate and help. And I know we've mentioned this before, but it's co-creation is so important to bringing something to life. This is why this topic was so important when we were, talking about it and discussing it, and just aligning the ways that collaboration and creativity align to my own personal beliefs of, like, even spiritual co-creation. Is something that is so important. So I think that's the way that it has evolved the most since being a child to today, is that I really want to work with people that are like-hearted. So I think it's not necessarily like, we have the same ideals, we're like-minded. Right. No, it's more so like, we are lighthearted in terms of we have similar alignment when it comes to just like our belief around either like humanity and basic human rights
Yes.
in those
Yep.
aspects, and just that, and or even like mutual respect as a baseline for
Yep.
being
Yep.
like-hearted. So those are things that are more important now to me, and I definitely
Mm-hmm.
noticed that trend as I got older. Even in
Yes.
college, I was a part of a lot of communities that were focused on building the bridging the gap between low income students on campus, first generation students on campus, and you know and making sure that they were being retained on campus. And that was something I was really passionate about. The people that I worked with were passionate about that. And there was that, you know, there was that feeling of we're all working towards a similar cause. And so if
Mm-hmm.
we felt connected in community.
Mm-hmm.
And as I've gotten older, even in creating this podcast, friend, it came across
Yeah.
very organically, because in terms of sometimes the way that you and I challenge ourselves around how we view life, or even our own personal growth and spiritual growth,
Mm-hmm.
is something that is very, like-hearted. And so I really enjoy that. And so that's when I think about the evolution, I think that's been the biggest difference in terms of being intentional about who I collaborate with, who I create with. And so I guess in saying that, friend, I'm so curious. Has there
Mm-hmm.
been that you can think of, any challenges for you in collaboration or even in being in community?
Yeah. No, that's a good point, or that's a good question. And in terms of, I think initial challenges, or not initial, just challenges in general, is sometimes, I think for me personally, is, as I mentioned, like I feel like I can adapt really well to a lot of different communities. And I felt like a challenge is, how do I protect my energy, because I am so adaptable and I am open to a lot of different people, a lot of different perspective. Almost like I feel like I'm always neutral in Switzerland. Like that type of feeling where I'm just like neutral, I'm like open. But I do think that poses challenge for me, because if I'm just so open and giving energy and receiving energy from communities, from people, I do think that could be difficult for me to decipher which is like a true community for me, to align with.
Yeah.
And that is not to say that I'm gullible. It's definitely not that. And it's not to say that if I feel like, myself and in a community don't have basic fundamental values that align. It's not to say I would completely change my values. It's not that. Because I'm also very okay with, shutting down things that don't align with me, or values that, again,
Mhm.
to your point, like basic humanities. If you're a mean person, like, no, we cannot be friends. So stuff like that, where I know how to draw boundaries. But I do think a challenge that I face is, how do I identify like that true community that truly align with me, because I am so open to a lot of different communities. So yeah, I would say that. I think it's just, how do I narrow down a little bit more, I think, what that community like, what true community building community means for me, without always being so neutral about how I feel about certain things, or how I view about certain
Yeah.
things. Yeah, so I think that's where my biggest challenge is right now, in terms of collaborating or choosing people I in the playground that I play with. But what about you? Like, any thoughts on any challenges for you in collaborating with specific communities, or even as we continue to evolve, like what challenges do you foresee yourself facing?
Yeah. And this is an interesting question for me, because as I mentioned, I really see the alignment of creativity and spirituality. I think there's so much there that aligns. And specifically, one of the things that has come up for me in my spiritual journey, I guess, is I've always seen myself as a very empathetic person. So I
Yeah.
can, feel other people's emotions sometimes. And
Mm.
I always thought that was something that was like, was something that I defined myself as. I'm empathetic. I
Mm.
have really high
Mm-hmm.
emotional intelligence. But I realized recently that while I'm really good at reading other people's emotions, sometimes like that will enable me to block my own emotions and not be able
Mm.
to really understand my own feelings. And so I don't know if this is like a defense mechanism or like a survivor instinct of like, oh, like,
Yeah.
I'm gonna push my feelings down and
Mm-hmm.
and instead, really be able to, help this person, or not help, but like feel this person's feelings so I don't feel my own. So it's something that has come up for me very recently, where I've become like, it's almost like if I think about a 360 view, it's like a blind spot for me, not
Mm.
fully being able to understand my own emotions about,
Mm.
certain things. And so I would say that's actually my biggest gap for collaboration in community, because
Mm.
it's, the reason being is that sometimes, like, if I'm not feeling my own emotions and or feeling how I feel about certain things, this creates uncertainty, this creates fear, this creates doubt, about where I stand. And so I think that definitely has come up for me a lot recently. And it's something that I have to remind myself, how much fun I've been having in interviewing other creators and collaborating. Because,
Mm-hmm.
friend, when you and I jump off a call, like we just like, recently, of like, I want to say like 2 weeks ago, we interviewed this creator, and that was our first interview in like, I want to say like 2 months. It was a while. And
Mm-hmm.
I was nervous. I was a little nervous. I mean, I was confident, but I was still a little nervous. But after that call, like, you and I jumped off and we had so much fun. We really enjoyed our
Yeah.
conversation. I felt like a little
Mm-hmm.
glow around us. And so, yeah, I think the biggest challenge, to answer your question, is really being able to, understand my own feelings, my own
Mm.
emotions, and not, necessarily feel other people's feelings before my own. I think that limits my collaboration. But
Yeah.
then when I'm in it and I'm in an interview and I'm collaborating and creating like an episode for this podcast, man, it's just so beautiful. It's so nice. It's so
I
like
know.
free. We just like chat, we just talk. And it's not deep, it doesn't have to
Nope.
be super deep. So I'm not sure if that answers your question, friend, but it is
Yeah,
something that
no.
I've been like reflecting a lot on. And, sometimes, like, in being seeing ourselves sometimes as empathetic,
Yeah.
we like sometimes can use that as a way to even, I guess, like, not see ourselves fully. So that's something that came up for me. So I'm like,
Mm.
okay, that's probably a
Mm.
blockage around co-creation and collaboration. So I'm trying to make it a point in even just trying to get out there and talk to more people. Maybe not, it might not necessarily lead to a collaboration in that moment, but
Right.
expanding my reach so that it
Yeah.
does, bring to me the folks that I'm meant to collaborate with, which I have felt that, the folks that we brought on this podcast really align
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
people that we want to have great conversations with. So far it has worked. but yeah, it is interesting for sure.
No, yeah, and I think yeah, I think when you're using a couple of things that came to mind as you were talking, Brian, is that, yeah, as someone who's super empathetic, you're always not, and I'm not that you're always, but I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you are someone who's an empathetic person is going to be organically wanting to put themselves in someone's shoes first, and sometimes it could unintentionally inhibit their ways of processing what they're feeling about, because the empath is so preoccupied about being there for someone else's emotions, or being there to receive someone's emotion and feel others' emotions, that maybe overcasts their own unintentionally, of course. And I think it is it's such a beautiful thing to be super empathetic. It's just like the selflessness of it, the essence of just being there for someone beyond yourself. Um, is super amazing. But I do think it's also important to be there for yourself and also
Yeah.
feel yourself first and your emotions first. But I think either way, like I think they're always gonna want to strive for balance. Like, how do you be an empath but still be an empath to yourself first? And I think tying that to like creativity is, I think with any creatives that we've talked to as well, like they don't want to collaborate with someone who's gonna overcast their own product, overcast their own creativity.
Yeah.
I think that's how it's making the connection with you talking, in terms of you being able to see your emotions also on top of being empathetic towards others. Was the concept of when a creative wants to create, but they're bringing someone else to their space, into the creative space. They don't want to lose like what they're creating because of the concept of bringing someone else. So I think that's how I just made the connection. Those are like the connections that came to mind.
Brian, thank you so much for just sharing that perspective and tying it back. As always, we want to tie it back to creativity, but you saying that, it really does feel right, because you're absolutely right. Creators, like, they want to, when they're collaborating, it really is a balance, and it's not like you're seeing one creator more, the other creator more. It's like it's a fusion of synergy, and so it is balanced. And I hadn't thought about it that way, so I really appreciate you tying that together. It is helpful, and I think it even affirms why we're having this conversation, because, like I said, it was something that came up for me very recently, where I even was at a point where I'm like, I don't know if like I want to be so empathetic. I don't even know if I want to use this word to describe who I am anymore. Not to say that I still am not going to be like a kind person, because that's just who I am. If someone is hurting, I'm gonna want to like support that in some way. But I think sometimes, like, in tying this back to evolving and growing, in sometimes labels can sometimes hurt us, and like this label of being empathetic was something that I'm growing out of, and I'm in the process of understanding how to find the balance. In terms of the playground and play, and who's in our playground, and all these questions, like, I'm really settling in this conversation that, of course, is tied back to what I mentioned around like people that value joy, wonder, imagination, all these things that are so like want to have fun, but really balancing it with who I am in the present as well. So friend, I thank you so much for sharing that, because it really does help ground our conversation for me today.
No, absolutely. It's always it's always fun to make the connections and what I'm hearing when you share bits and pieces by yourself to the audience as well, but then also finding the connecting of how it connects, or what it resonated with me, and just listening to you as well. So it's always fun to do that.
So, friend, as we wrap up this conversation, I would love to for you to share one thing that you are looking forward to in terms of collaboration or community in this upcoming year.
I think one thing I'm really looking forward to is the concept of like transformative collaboration, and that can mean so many different things, but I do think there's power in collaborating with people that are like-hearted, like you said, or not like-minded. I like the like-hearted part. But I do think there's I want to continue to have the essence of what I shared in the beginning of me growing up, being able to adapt to different communities, but do that in a more transformative way. So I am looking forward to more collaborations with very specific community that aligned with me, that can again transform, whether it's my thought processes or whether it's my creative pursuits like this podcast, or even whether it's like just continuing to transform how I view inner child play, or just continue to nurture the inner child. I think is something that I'm looking forward to. What about you, friend? What are you looking forward to in terms of future collaborations, or the meaning of collaboration in community?
Yeah, I'm well, first I'm so excited to really take the collaborations that we've done so far in Creator Corner to the next level.
Yeah.
What I mean by that is, we've been so fortunate to have a bunch of creators come on this podcast, talk about their journey, share some great advice with our audience. But I want to find new ways to collaborate with some of these creators. So definitely stay tuned for that. but yeah, that's what I'm most excited about. Taking the current collaborations that we've had and and you're using your word transformative collaboration, transforming that to other heights or other outlets. But so yeah, we'll see how that will shape up in the next year. But that's something that I'm really excited about, whether it's even bringing some creators back on the podcast, or potentially meeting creators where they're at. Is something that I'm really excited and looking forward to.
Yeah, no, same friend, and yeah, I think this was a super great conversation. But of course, we always want to hear from the audience, like, what does intentional collaboration or transformative collaboration mean to everyone, whether to all creatives out there or just in general, like any listeners out there. So
yeah, and I know we like to wrap up, friend, with a little bit of a bonfire moment here, and for the audience that may have forgotten, because I know it's been a while, what a bonfire moment is. It's basically like Mary and I, we like to visualize this big fire in front of us and just release onto the fire maybe something that we are letting go around this specific theme about collaboration, or something that we are releasing and moving forward. And so I can start, friend, because and just in the conversation here, I think I am very excited to release the term around being an empathetic person. Like I said, it's not to say that I'm still not going to care about others. It means more so that, I won't use this label as an excuse not to listen to my own feelings and my own emotions, even more importantly, when it comes to collaboration and, inviting others to my playground. Because if I'm not filling my cup and listening to my own needs, like you said, this collaboration is not gonna it won't have that synergy of both or more parties. So yeah, that's what I'm releasing into the fire.
Yeah, I think what I'm releasing is the meaning of, I think labels keep coming up for some reason in terms of just releasing what it means to be like labels, releasing. Yeah, I've talked about earlier, like I used to hang out with this group of the people who played sports or people who like school. Like, even releasing that and what it means to have, putting labels in the different groups I collaborated with. I want to release that concept because at the end of the day, like we've mentioned over and over in the episode, I just want to be able to collaborate with people that are like-minded, that also still values their inner child and also still values, having that really fun and playful and growth mindset all along with it in between. So I don't want to put any labels to like the communities I can adapt to anymore.
I love that, friend. For our audience, we would also love to hear, what are you releasing when it comes to collaboration and who you invite to your playground as well.
Thank you for tuning in. Creator Corner is a podcast production presented by the Ars Network. It is hosted by Dalia Zaragoza and Mary Figueroa. This podcast is edited and produced by Muhammad Abdullah Kawish.